Representative Boebert said government should be more like Elon Musk. Jasmine Crockett didn't flinch. She opened a folder inside a $700 million contract, no oversight, no bidding, no names. And then she asked, "Tell me, what did we cut to pay for this?" What happened next flipped the hearing. Names, faces, layoffs, cancer wards, rockets that explode. Watch what it means when efficiency becomes a weapon. The fluorescent lights of Committee Room 2154 cast harsh shadows across mahogany tables arranged in perfect governmental symmetry. Outside, Washington's autumn rain streaked the windows like tears on bureaucratic glass. Inside, the House Oversight Committee prepared for what would appear to be another routine budget hearing until it wasn't. Representative Lauren Boebert adjusted her jacket with practiced precision, her blonde hair catching the camera lights as she leaned into her microphone. The red recording light blinked steadily, a digital heartbeat for democracy's theater. Behind her staffers shuffled papers with the quiet urgency of those who knew they were about to witness something significant. "Ladies and gentlemen," Boebert began, her voice carrying the rehearsed cadence of political theater, "we're here today to discuss government efficiency. And when I think about efficiency, when I think about innovation, when I think about results, there's one name that stands above all others." She paused, letting the weight of anticipation settle over the room like dust motes in the afternoon light filtering through those rain-streaked windows. Elon Musk. The name hung in the air, electric with possibility and controversy. Boebert's eyes gleamed with the fervor of the converted, a true believer in the gospel of disruptive entrepreneurship. If government ran like Elon Musk runs his companies, we'd eliminate waste, we'd cut through red tape, and we'd deliver results for the American people. Tesla revolutionized transportation. SpaceX conquered space. Neuralink is pushing the boundaries of human potential itself. Across the committee table, Representative Jasmine Crockett sat motionless, her dark eyes fixed on Boebert with the intensity of a predator watching prey. Her hands rested flat against a thick manila folder, fingers barely touching the edges of documents that would soon become weapons. She didn't interrupt, didn't object, didn't even blink. She simply absorbed every word, cataloging each claim like evidence for a trial that hadn't yet begun. Boebert continued warming to her theme with evangelical passion. This administration talks about fiscal responsibility, but they don't understand what real efficiency looks like. They throw money at failing programs, at outdated systems, at bureaucratic black holes that consume taxpayer dollars and produce nothing. The committee room had grown quiet, the usual rustling of papers and whispered conversations fading into expectant silence. Even the court reporter's fingers seemed to hover over her keys with unusual stillness. But Elon Musk, he gets results. He builds rockets that land themselves. He creates cars that drive themselves. He doesn't need committees. He doesn't need focus groups. He doesn't need years of environmental impact studies. He identifies a problem and he solves it. Crockett's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only sign that beneath her composed exterior something was building pressure behind a dam that was about to burst. Boebert leaned back satisfied with her opening salvo. That's the kind of leadership this government needs. That's the kind of efficiency the American people deserve. If we could just get out of our own way, if we could just stop the endless bureaucratic second-guessing, we could unleash the same kind of innovation here in Washington. The applause from the gallery was polite but enthusiastic scattered clapping that echoed off the committee room's wood-paneled walls. Boebert smiled, clearly pleased with her performance, already mentally composing the social media posts that would amplify her message to millions of followers hungry for simple solutions to complex problems. But Jasmine Crockett wasn't applauding. Instead, she was opening that manila folder, her movements deliberate and methodical. The papers inside rustled softly, a sound that would soon become thunderous. The committee chairman, a gray-haired veteran of countless such hearings, cleared his throat. "Thank you, Representative Boebert." The chair now recognizes Representative Crockett for her opening statement. Crockett didn't immediately speak. She lifted the first document from her folder, holding it at an angle that caught the overhead lights, making the printed numbers seem to glow with accusatory fire. When she finally looked up, her gaze swept the room with the measured intensity of a prosecutor about to deliver an opening argument. Innovation! She said the single word, dropping into the silence like a stone into still water. Efficiency. Results. She set the document down with deliberate care. These are beautiful words, aren't they? They sound so clean, so modern, so unassailable. Her voice carried a different quality than Boebert's, less performance, more precision. Each syllable was weighted with the gravity of someone who had spent years in courtrooms, where words weren't just rhetoric, but instruments of justice. The representative from Colorado paints a compelling picture. A government that works like a business, a bureaucracy that moves at the speed of innovation, public service that delivers private sector results. Crockett's hands moved to another document in her folder. It all sounds wonderful until you look at the receipts. The word receipts fell like a gavel, sharp and final. Around the room, chairs creaked as people leaned forward, sensing that the real hearing was about to begin. The overhead projector hummed to life, casting a blue glow across the committee room as Crockett stood moving with the fluid grace of someone completely comfortable in confrontation. The first document appeared on the wall-mounted screens, row after row of budget line items in the sterile font of government accounting. Let's talk about efficiency. She said, her voice carrying the kind of calm that precedes a storm. Let's talk about the budget reconciliation bill that this committee approved just last month. The numbers on the screen were stark, unforgiving. Healthcare and human services down 18%. Education down 12%. Public broadcasting down 94%. Each line item represented thousands of families, hundreds of communities, millions of Americans who would wake up tomorrow with less than they had today. Boebert shifted in her chair, her earlier confidence flickering like a candle in wind. Representative Crockett, these are necessary cuts. We can't continue to throw money at programs that don't deliver results. Don't deliver results. Crockett's voice didn't rise, but it sharpened, acquiring an edge that could cut glass. Tell that to the 70,000 children who will lose Medicaid coverage over the next 5 years. Tell that to the families in rural Colorado, your constituents, Representative Boebert, who depend on PBS for news and educational programming because they live in media deserts created by corporate consolidation. The camera caught Bobert's face in profile, jaw, clenched eyes narrowing. Behind her, staffers bent over smartphones, probably alerting communications teams to prepare damage control statements. Crockett advanced to the next slide, her movement as purposeful as a chess master positioning for checkmate. But here's what's interesting about efficiency. It's surgical, isn't it? It cuts precisely. It knows exactly what to eliminate and what to preserve. The new document filled the screens a dense forest of budget allocations, most crossed out with red ink, but some items highlighted in yellow, untouched by the efficiency blade. Defense contractors, no cuts. Agricultural subsidies for industrial farming, no cuts. Tax incentives for fossil fuel companies, no cuts. Crockett's finger traced along a specific line highlighted in bright yellow. And this interesting little item here, innovation priority credits. $700 million, no cuts. In fact, this line item didn't even exist in last year's budget. The room had grown so quiet that the air conditioning seemed deafening. Even the court reporter had stopped typing, her hands suspended over her keyboard, as if afraid that the sound of keys might break some spell. Boebert leaned forward, her voice defensive. Innovation incentives are crucial for maintaining America's competitive edge. We need to encourage the kinds of breakthrough technologies that what Crockett interrupted, her voice still calm, but now carrying the weight of inevitability, that create jobs. Because Tesla just announced another round of layoffs. That strengthened national security because SpaceX's safety record is under federal investigation. That served the public good. She clicked to the next slide, and the room collectively held its breath. It was a simple document. A government contract authorization form, mostly redacted black boxes with only a few key details visible. Recipient, various private technology entities. Amount $700,000. Justification, advanced research and development initiatives. $700 million. Crockett repeated, letting each word drop like stones into water. To unnamed private technology entities, for undefined research and development, approved without competitive bidding, authorized without public oversight. Boebert's face had gone pale, her earlier evangelical confidence replaced by the tight-lipped expression of someone trying to hold back a flood. Representative Crockett, these are complex matters involving proprietary technologies and national security considerations. National security. Crockett's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. Is that what we're calling it now? Because I have another document here that might interest the committee. The next slide was a newspaper clipping enlarged to fill the screens. Musk declines congressional testimony, cites scheduling conflicts. The date was just 2 weeks ago. The same week we gutted Medicaid, Crockett said, her voice acquiring a rhythmic quality like a prosecutor building toward a closing argument. The same week we eliminated funding for public broadcasting. The same week we fired 12,000 federal employees in the name of efficiency. That same week, Elon Musk was invited to testify before this very committee about how his companies use federal subsidies. She paused, letting the silence stretch until it became uncomfortable, accusatory. He declined. Scheduling conflicts, his lawyers said. Too busy with innovation, presumably. Too busy to explain to the American people how their tax dollars are being used. too busy to justify why his companies receive government support while children lose health care and communities lose their public media. The committee chairman shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his gavel hand twitching as if he were considering calling for recess. But the momentum was building now, inexorable as gravity, and everyone in the room could feel it. Crockett moved to the podium, her presence commanding the space like a general surveying a battlefield. Representative Boebert, you said government should learn from Elon Musk. Well, I think you're right. I think we have learned from him. We've learned how to take public money and privatize the benefits. We've learned how to wrap corporate welfare in the language of innovation. We've learned how to demand efficiency from everyone except those who need efficiency the least. The words hung in the air like smoke from a fire that was just beginning to burn. The committee room had transformed into something resembling a courtroom with Crockett as prosecutor, the budget documents as evidence, and an absent defendant whose presence loomed larger for his absence. The afternoon light had shifted, casting longer shadows across the mahogany tables, making the whole scene feel like a film noir detective story where the clues were finally coming together. Crockett clicked to a new slide, this one showing a grid of photographs Elon Musk at various public events, speaking at conferences, posing with politicians, always smiling, always confident. But one photograph was different. It showed an empty chair at a congressional hearing table with a nameplate reading E. Musk in front of it. Let's talk about accountability, she said, her voice carrying the weight of someone who had spent years demanding it from powerful people who thought themselves above such mundane concerns. Because that's what efficiency really means, isn't it? Being accountable for results. She gestured toward the photographs. This is Elon Musk at the Met Gala 3 weeks ago. This is him at a tech conference in Austin 2 weeks ago. This is him on Joe Rogan's podcast last week. And this, she pointed to the empty chair, is him at our hearing on federal technology subsidies, where he was scheduled to explain how public money becomes private profit. Boebert tried to interrupt, but Crockett raised a hand with the authority of someone accustomed to controlling courtrooms full of hostile witnesses. But let's give credit where it's due. Mr. Musk is incredibly efficient. Do you know how efficiently he uses government subsidies? The next slide was a timeline stretching back 15 years, showing a steady stream of government contracts, tax credits, and regulatory approval flowing to Musk's various enterprises. Tesla, $2.4 billion in federal electric vehicle credits. SpaceX, $11.8 billion in NASA contracts. Solar City, $750 million in federal tax credits before being absorbed by Tesla. Neuralink, $500 million do-not-H research grants. The Boring Company, $240 million in infrastructure development credits. Each number appeared on the screen with a soft chime like a cash register tallying up a purchase. The accumulated total appeared at the bottom, $15.7 billion. $15.7 billion. Crockett said, letting the number breathe in the silence. Indirect government support. Not loans that might be repaid, not investments that could generate returns for taxpayers, direct transfers from public accounts to private companies. She moved closer to Boebert, her movement predatory, purposeful. And you know what's really efficient about this arrangement, the accountability structure. Tesla is being investigated by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration for autopilot-related fatalities. SpaceX is under review by the FAA for multiple safety violations. Neuralink faces federal investigation for animal welfare violations in their testing protocols. The slides changed automatically now, showing newspaper headlines: Tesla, autopilot, involved in fatal crash, SpaceX rocket, explosion, under investigation, Neuralink monkey deaths, spark federal probe. But here's the beautiful part. Crockett continued, her voice acquiring an almost admiring quality, as if she were genuinely impressed by the audacity of it all. When Congress asks questions about these investigations, when we ask how companies under federal scrutiny continue to receive federal funding, when we ask for basic transparency about how taxpayer money is being used scheduling conflicts. She clicked to another slide, a formal letter on congressional letterhead addressed to Musk's legal team. February 15th, invitation to testify about Tesla's safety record. March 3rd, declined citing business commitments. March 20th, second invitation regarding SpaceX contracts. April 1st, declined, citing international travel. April 15th, third invitation for comprehensive hearing on all federal subsidies. May 8th, declined, citing scheduling conflicts. The pattern was clear, damning, undeniable. Each declined invitation appeared on the screen with a red X, creating a visual representation of accountability, deferred responsibility, avoided transparency, denied. Boebert finally found her voice, though it carried less of her earlier evangelical certainty. Representative Crockett private citizens can't be compelled to testify about lawful business activities. Mr. Musk's companies operate within the bounds of existing regulations that his companies helped write. Crockett shot back her composure, finally cracking to reveal the fire beneath. Do you know who lobbied for the electric vehicle tax credit structure that primarily benefits Tesla buyers, Tesla's lobbying team? Do you know who helped draft the commercial spaceflight regulations that govern SpaceX's regulatory affairs department? She moved to a new slide showing a revolving door diagram, former government officials who now work for Musk's companies, former Musk employees, who now held government positions overseeing those same companies. This isn't innovation, Representative Boebert. This is regulatory capture. This is what happens when the line between public service and private profit disappears entirely. And you know what we call it when someone takes public money, avoids public accountability, and uses public positions to benefit private interests. The room held its breath. We call it efficiency. The word landed like a physical blow, stripping away all the noble rhetoric and revealing the ugly machinery beneath. Around the room, journalists were typing furiously, staffers were whispering urgent conversations into phones, and committee members were exchanging glances that suggested this hearing had just become much more than anyone had anticipated. Crockett returned to her seat, but she wasn't finished. She was simply pausing like a pianist between movements, letting the audience absorb what they had heard before building toward the crescendo. You said government should learn from Elon Musk, she said quietly, her voice now carrying an almost conversational tone that was somehow more threatening than her earlier intensity. Well, I think you're absolutely right. The only question is, Which lesson should we learn? How to innovate, or how to disappear when the bill comes due? The afternoon light had faded completely now, replaced by the harsh fluorescent glow that made everyone in the committee room look slightly ill, slightly desperate. It was the lighting of emergency rooms and police stations, places where truth was extracted under duress. Crockett stood again, but this time she moved differently, not with the predatory grace of a prosecutor, but with the solemn dignity of someone about to deliver a eulogy. Let me tell you about efficiency. She said, her voice soft enough that the room had to strain to hear her. Let me tell you what it looks like when it comes home. The new slide was a photograph. A small child in a hospital bed, feed tubes, snaking from tiny arms, parents holding hands beside the bed with the hollow-eyed expression of people who had learned that hope was a luxury they could no longer afford. This is Maria Santos, age 7, from Representative Boebert's district in Colorado. Acute lymphoblastic leukemia. Her family's Medicaid coverage was terminated last month as part of our efficiency initiative. The Santos family now faces a choice bankruptcy or watching their daughter die. The image changed, an elderly man sitting in a dark living room holding a photograph of a woman in a wedding dress. This is Robert Chin, 74, from Ohio. His wife died last year. He used to listen to NPR every morning. It was their routine for 43 years of marriage. The local station went off the air last week. Federal funding eliminated. Mr. Chin sits in silence now. Boebert's face had gone ashen, but Crockett wasn't looking at her anymore. She was looking directly into the cameras, speaking to the millions of Americans who would see this footage, who would share these stories, who would recognize their own faces in these anonymous tragedies. This is Jennifer Walsh, fired from the EPA after 12 years monitoring water quality in rural communities. Her position was eliminated in the name of reducing government waste. The communities she served now have no one testing their drinking water. Efficiency. The slides continued, each one a human face attached to a budget line item, each story a thread in the larger tapestry of systematic abandonment disguised as fiscal responsibility. 70,000 children losing health care. 300 rural communities losing their public broadcasting, 12,000 federal workers losing their jobs, all in the name of efficiency, all to balance a budget that somehow still found $700 million for unnamed private technology entities. Crockett moved to the center of the room, positioning herself where all the cameras could capture her clearly. But let's be fair. Let's look at what we're getting for our investment in private sector efficiency. The next slide was a split screen on the left, the faces of the people who had just been shown: Maria Santos, Robert Chin, Jennifer Walsh. On the right, a graph showing Tesla's stock price over the past year, SpaceX's valuation trajectory, Musk's net worth climbing steadily upward like a rocket escaping gravity. $700 million in federal subsidies, $15.7 billion in total government support over 15 years. And what do the American people have to show for it? She clicked to another slide, employment figures for Musk's companies, with layoffs highlighted in red. Tesla, 12,000 workers laid off this year while receiving federal electric vehicle credits. SpaceX, 3,400 contractors terminated while securing new NASA contracts. Twitter, X 6,000 employees fired while the platform is used to spread misinformation that undermines the very democratic institutions that provide those subsidies. The numbers were devastating in their simplicity. Each layoff, a person with a mortgage, children, dreams that had been marked as redundant in the name of innovation. But surely, Crockett continued, her voice taking on the tone of someone reasoning with an unreasonable child. Surely the products justify the investment. Surely the innovation is worth the human cost. The next slide showed a Tesla on fire beside a highway emergency responders standing helplessly as the electric vehicle's battery burned with chemical fury. Tesla. Autopilot failures, 467 reported incidents, 23 fatalities under federal investigation, but the subsidies continue. Another slide. A SpaceX rocket exploding in a brilliant fireball against the blue sky. SpaceX mission failures 12 in the past 3 years, including 2 carrying NASA payloads worth hundreds of millions of dollars. But the contracts continue. Neuralink trials, multiple animals died during testing, leading to federal investigation for animal welfare violations. But the research grants continue. Each failure appeared on screen with brutal clarity. The gap between promise and performance rendered in stark visual terms. But Crockett wasn't finished. She was building towards something bigger, something that would reframe everything that had come before. Do you know what actual efficiency looks like? She asked, her voice rising for the first time, carrying the passion that had been simmering beneath her prosecutorial calm. It looks like Medicaid, which delivers health care to 70 million Americans with an administrative cost of less than 2%. It looks like Social Security, which processes 65 million payments every month with 99.7% accuracy. It looks like the National Weather Service, which saves thousands of lives every year by predicting storms with unprecedented precision. The slide changed to show government workers, doctors at VA hospitals, teachers in Head Start programs, scientists at the National Institutes of Health park rangers, air traffic controllers, food safety inspectors. These are the people we fire in the name of efficiency. These are the programs we cut to fund innovation. These are the services we eliminate so that billionaires can receive subsidies to build rockets that explode, and cars that crash, and brain chips that kill monkeys. Her voice had become a force of nature, now carrying the accumulated weight of every injustice, every abandoned responsibility, every betrayed promise that had led to this moment. That's not innovation, Representative Boebert. That's not efficiency. That's extraction. From us to them. From the public good to private wealth. From the common purpose to concentrated power. The room was completely silent except for the hum of cameras and the soft clicking of keyboards as journalists tried to capture not just the words, but the raw moral authority behind them. Crockett returned to her seat, but she remained standing, her presence still commanding the space like a judge about to deliver a sentence that would change everything. The committee room had taken on the quality of a cathedral at twilight shadows, lengthening silence, deepening the weight of revelation, settling over everything like dust after an explosion. Crockett stood one final time, but her movement was different now. Slower, more deliberate, carrying the gravity of someone about to deliver not just an argument, but a verdict on the American experiment itself. Let me tell you what I learned today. She said, her voice quiet but carrying clearly to every corner of the room, to every camera, to every American who would eventually see this moment. I learned that we have created a government that has forgotten who it serves. She walked to the wall-mounted screens now showing a simple split image on one side, the budget line reading, Innovation Priority Credits, $700,000, and on the other a photograph of an empty Medicaid office, its doors chained shut. A sign reading, Closed due to budget cuts, taped to the window. This is our choice. She set her finger tracing the air between the two images. This is what efficiency looks like when it forgets its purpose. We have chosen to fund the dreams of billionaires while abandoning the needs of children. We have chosen to subsidize rockets to Mars while denying health care on Earth. We have chosen to call it innovation when it's really just the oldest story in human history, the powerful taking from the powerless and calling it progress. Boebert tried one last time to interrupt, but her voice came out small, defensive, Representative Crockett. These are complex economic issues that require nuanced understanding of market dynamics. Market dynamics. Crockett turned her eyes blazing with the kind of fury that comes not from personal offense, but from moral outrage. Tell me about market dynamics, Representative Boebert. Tell me how the market decided that Maria Santos doesn't deserve cancer treatment, but Elon Musk deserves $700 million in subsidies. Tell me how the market determined that rural communities don't need public broadcasting, but private space companies need public funding. She moved closer to Boebert, not threatening, but implacable, like justice itself taking physical form. Tell me how the market decided that 12,000 federal workers were inefficient, but $15 billion in subsidies for companies under federal investigation is smart investment. Tell me about those market dynamics. Boebert had no answer. Around the room, other committee members shifted uncomfortably, their earlier confidence in free market rhetoric crumbling under the weight of actual consequences attached to real people. Crockett turned back to the cameras, and when she spoke again, her voice carried the cadence of prophecy of someone seeing clearly through the fog of political rhetoric to the essential truth beneath. Here's what efficiency really means in 2025. It means we have efficiently transferred wealth from public purposes to private pockets. We have efficiently eliminated accountability for those who need it least while demanding it from those who have it least. We have efficiently restructured government to serve not the people who elect it, but the people who can afford to influence it. The slides changed one final time, showing a simple timeline, key moments over the past decade when public programs were cut, regulations were relaxed, subsidies were expanded, oversight was reduced. Each point on the timeline corresponded to a surge in wealth concentration at the top and service reduction at the bottom. This didn't happen by accident. Crockett said, her voice now carrying the weight of historical judgment. This was a choice, a systematic, deliberate choice to redefine government's purpose from serving the common good to facilitating private accumulation. And we called it efficiency, because efficiency sounds better than what it really is, abandonment. She paused, letting the word hang in the air like an accusation that couldn't be answered. We have abandoned our responsibility to the sick child whose insurance we cut. We have abandoned our responsibility to the elderly man whose public radio we silenced. We have abandoned our responsibility to the federal worker whose job we eliminated. We have abandoned our responsibility to the communities we were elected to serve. Her voice rose again, not with anger now, but with the kind of passionate clarity that cuts through years of accumulated cynicism and political compromise. And for what? So that men who have more money than most nations can receive more money from the nation they increasingly control. So that companies under investigation for safety violations can continue receiving safety-related contracts. So that billionaires who refuse to testify to Congress can continue benefiting from congressional appropriations. She moved to the center of the room one final time, positioning herself where every camera would capture not just her words, but the moral authority behind them. Representative Boebert, you said government should learn from Elon Musk. Well, we have. We've learned how to privatize profits and socialize losses. We've learned how to demand efficiency from everyone except those who need efficiency least. We've learned how to transform public service into private extraction while calling it innovation. The silence that followed was different from the earlier pauses, deeper, more complete. Like the quiet that follows a funeral or a verdict. Around the room, people were processing not just what they had heard, but what it meant, what it revealed about the country they thought they knew. Crockett looked directly into the main camera, her gaze steady and unwavering. If this is what efficiency looks like, if this is what innovation means, then somewhere along the way, we decided that the people don't matter anymore. We decided that government exists not to serve its citizens, but to service its donors. We decided that democracy is just another market, and like all markets, it belongs to whoever can afford to buy it. She gathered her papers, the sound of rustling documents, the only noise in the absolute silence that had fallen over the room. The question isn't whether government should be more efficient. The question is efficient at what, efficient at serving whom. Because right now, we are terrifyingly efficient at forgetting who we're supposed to work for. As she sat down, the weight of her words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. The hearing would continue, other witnesses would testify, procedural votes would be taken. But everyone present understood that something fundamental had just occurred, not just a political confrontation, but a moral reckoning. The cameras kept rolling, capturing the aftermath, Boebert's pale face, the uncomfortable shifting of other committee members, the furious typing of journalists who knew they had just witnessed something that would reshape the political conversation. Outside, the Washington rain continued to fall against the windows, each drop like a tear for a democracy that had lost its way, mourning the distance between its promises and its performance between the government it was supposed to be and the government it had become. But inside committee room 21-4, at least for this moment, someone had spoken truth to power, with the kind of moral clarity that democracy requires to survive. Whether anyone would listen, whether anything would change, remained to be seen. The red recording light blinked steadily, a digital heartbeat for a system that might still remember how to heal itself if it could remember what it was supposed to be healing for. In the end, that's what efficiency really meant, not the speed of extraction, but the precision of service. Not the elimination of oversight, but the focus on outcome. Not the abandonment of responsibility, but the embrace of it. The question was whether America still remembered the difference.